up, guys? We are back. We're back. We're back. I'm Amanda Sapp here on Amazing 102.5 FM, your do good through good station where we're changing lives one listener at a time. I told you guys we had another guest here on the line with us today. So you definitely want to make sure that you tapped into us in all the ways that you can to hear who I have with us today. So please download our free KMAZ app. Make sure you find us on our website at amazing1025fm.org. And if you're inside of the 610 loop in downtown, midtown, third ward, fifth ward, then you can get in your car right now and listen to us at 102.5 FM. So again, turn your volumes all the way up while I share with you who I have with me today. She is a clinical sexologist and relationship coach. In her work, she holds up a mirror to her clients, encouraging them to see themselves, to get uncomfortable, and to commit to change. She is in this space. She helps people by providing them tools to do perspective taking, be honest, and communicate effectively to ensure healthier relationships. She is a top-selling author of the book, Sis, Is It You? Discovering Self-Revelation. As a life coach, she has successfully restored relationships between women and men, husband and wife, and facilitated tough conversations. She has also offered workshops to groups sharing strategies for self-evaluation, healing, and sexual education, all leading to healthier sexual relationships. She would consider herself creative, introspective, and thoughtful. Please welcome onto our amazing airwaves, Miss Tiffynee Terry-Thomas. Great morning.
Great morning. That sounded even better with you reading it. Thank you.
I know. So glad to have you on the line with us today. And I've shared a little bit about who you are, what you do. I shared with our listener, what you do. Can you share with us a little bit about who you are for someone who's just hearing about you for the very first time?
So I'm a clinical sexologist and relationship coach. And a lot of people always say, well, what does that do? And so we study human sexuality, but I'm also a scientific researcher. And so I study it from a neuroscience point of view as well as in the mind. But in that, I'm also a relationship coach and a spiritual life transformational coach, because a lot of people will come to me and they'll be like, how do I get better sex? Or how do I have a better relationship? And I'm like, you guys don't even like each other. And so it's a lot of inner work we have to do. So it's the transformation first inside spiritually, and then it's moving on to the relationship side. So then we can have wholesome relationship, because some of us are out here leaving toxic turds in people's yards that we deal with. And then we go to this sex and we're like, we're trying to have this mind-blowing sex or just long-lasting sex. And sex is like sand, right? It's there for the moment, but then it fizzles through. And then you're like, okay, now I need some more sand. And it's like, you can't do that all the time. So you have to have intimacy and intimate connections. And a lot of people don't focus on that. So those are how my three things connect. So sexologist is really just the top tier thing that you get to when you do the work.
Okay, so for someone who's saying, how does this woman know? What led you to become a clinical sexologist and relationship coach?
I think all my life I've been interested in relationships. I've always been an observer. I've always been watching like what happens in families and stuff like that. And coming from a family that my parents were married for 14 years and then got a divorce. And I was like, what happened? What was going on? Right? Because I never really saw them argue in front of me, but clearly something was happening. And so I also noticed that sex was something that a lot of people questioned, but it was like, shh, don't say that out loud. Right. Mm-hmm. And I was like, but if it creates babies and it's creating more people in this world, and then it fosters other things, what is the deepness of it? Right. And I wanted to kind of get down in the nitty gritty and kind of figure out like what keeps it connected and what deters it, what destroys it and stuff. And we always hear people like in the Bible and all these rules and stuff like that. But I understand because it's a powerful thing that if you don't understand how to put it in a container and contain it, it can spill all over and end up damaging you in your life. And a lot of people don't look at it like that because we're constantly just giving it out for free with not knowing the power in it and what we hold in it.
What are some of the most common issues that your clients come to you with, and what are the steps that you take to help them overcome it?
I want to say the most common ones are my sex is not that great. I don't like my mate. I'm not attracted to them anymore. Or I don't feel confident and comfortable in the bedroom. Right. And how I actually get them to understand that is kind of taking a step back and reflecting on self. And that's what made me create the book Sis, Is It You? Because it was like, is it you? Is it you that is like the issue, but it's also you that holds the key, right? And so it's kind of taking a step back and saying, what type of things can I discover about myself? How can I actually have self-intimacy before I try to have intimacy with others? And some of us are not necessarily honest with ourselves. So I ask really tough questions. I listen, and I listen very intently, and I listen for small cues and stuff. And then a lot of people will keep telling you the same story over and over and over, right? You have a problem, you go, girl, he da 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 and da da da, and the person will keep letting you just talk, right? I'll interrupt you because I want to know how you got there. What happened? I'm not letting you go 10 minutes telling me no story. I'm breaking it up in chunks so we can evaluate, because I guarantee you nobody's ever stopped you before. You continue to tell this story, so now it's something that is popular. And so that now that it's popular, you can just keep telling a great story. Just like a great book can become a bestseller because if people have heard about it. A great story can too. But a story is even better when I know the whys and the whats and the wins and what really made me feel that way. And a lot of people don't necessarily try to define what makes them happy. And happiness happens in happenings, right? So they literally stop and they think this whole block of a situation should make them happy when there were moments in there. And understanding that to be vulnerable, you have to actually be okay with discovering your emotions and understanding them. And in my book, I have this word wheel. A lot of people will use like the top little keys and stuff like that, where it's just like, I'm angry, I'm sad, I'm blah, blah, blah. And I always tell people, my clients, anger is the most disrespected emotion out there, because everybody can get angry, but nobody can really tell you what's wrong. And so the word wheel kind of helps you pinpoint what word outside of that makes you feel something. So it's kind of expanding your glossary of words, because a lot of us are limited to things. And so I make people kind of discover those words and kind of sit in them. And then I'm big on definitions. Look the word up. Don't just go off of what you think based off of memory or what your mom said or someone used it, but look the word up and see if you can actually connect with it in a way where you actually see yourself. Not just where you see others, but where you see yourself at. So it's really just breaking things down in a system, and going back to kind of like when you're in school. Like I teach in that way too. My workshops are hands-on. It's using simple stuff, but like, this is you.
Okay, I've got a question on our one of our social media platforms, and they ask, what about age? I still have desires, but feel like I'm too old to act on them.
First of all, I would ask that person, who told you that? And who defines age, right? Are you defining age because what society tells you? Are you defining age because what you limit yourself to be around? Are you defining age because what you saw your mother do and in generations? And so that's the first question you break down. Like, why do you think that, right? Why do you feel like, instead of saying I'm 27 years old or I'm 39 years old, why am I 39 years young, right? So it's kind of trying to figure out why you even have that thought process in the first place. And then connecting with, I still have desires. Well, yes, those things still work in us. Our body is still functioning. Our mind is still acting as it works. It's not dead, right? And so it's taking a step back and saying, okay, I have these desires, but why am I afraid to talk about them? And I think one of the things is vulnerability. It's being intimate and being able to have that intimate conversation with whoever you have those desires for, and being open to listening to them and not having a pre-biased opinion about what they're going to say.
What do you say about couples who may have experienced infidelity in their relationships, and how do you restore a sexual desire in that?
That's funny you say that. So I have a book coming out, and it probably won't come out until 2024. It's called "I Sucked Out of His Redefining Intimacy After Infidelity." and really, the reason why I say that is it's because sometimes when infidelity happens, trust is broken. And what happens when trust is broken, you then put your clothes back on. So intimacy is being naked. Being fully naked and being like Adam and Eve in the Bible, right? But when they got in trouble, they put their clothes back on, so they no longer were intimate with God. And so when I think about people in relationships, when intimacy happens, when someone gets in trouble, I'm no longer telling you how I feel because you broke this or you took it to someone else, right? Instead of just having a real conversation. And sometimes it's like, well, why did you do that? Why did you feel the need? And being open to hearing their real response, even if it's connected to you. And sometimes we limit that because it's the prioritization of trauma. When you get hurt and someone betrays you, that now trumps that, instead of you actually taking a step back and saying, did I traumatize this person as well by stop talking to them, stop respecting them, stop honoring them, stop admiring them? When the things that I promised to do when I first entered this relationship, but then I allowed stress and anger and all these things to cloud that vision instead of seeking help to kind of figure out what this looks like for me.
Got another question for you. How do you approach working with couples who have different sexual desires or preferences?
I think a lot of times couples don't recognize that there is what compromise is. And sometimes it's kind of like, well, I want to have sex every day. And then somebody's like, well, I want to have sex twice a month. Well, really, it's kind of understanding what's the purpose of the sex, right? And not to say what the purpose of the sex, of course, it's desire and pleasure and stuff like that. But trying to figure out each person's reason. Most men probably want to have sex all the time. Most women don't, because they never saw their moms doing it. They never saw people doing this. So it's generational. It's what I've been taught, what my mind has been trained. I've never seen my mom give it up like that. But little do you know, she was throwing it in a circle. You know what I'm saying? As soon as y'all got in the bed. And so recognizing that where do our differences at? And I think that's what, sorry. Intimacy.
I don't want my daughter to see me throwing it in a circle. So how is it? What does an example look like? How do we do this? I don't understand how for our children who are growing up and we want them to feel secure in their sexual, experiences or relationships. What does an example look like for them?
For my children, we tell them that we are intimate. We tell them like, hey, this is mommy and daddy time. Like that is very important, because my first ministry is my husband and my family. And so if my kids don't understand that that's happening, yet they think that they can invade that space. You have people's kids sleeping in the bed and now I can't get none, right? Mm-hmm. But it's really because you are not really respecting the other person's needs as well. And so the other thing is you're raising children to believe that that doesn't exist. I had a client one time say, I don't kiss my wife in front of my kids. And I said, well, do you understand that then they will do that and take that outwards? Yeah. And then they're teaching other people that, when that's what creates intimacy. There's certain things of physical touch and intimate interactions are creating intimacy and intimate experiences. And so if I'm only doing that behind closed doors, are you a secret? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And why do you feel that way, right? I think one of the things is worse to walk in on your parents than to know, knock before you, because I don't know what they're doing. Yeah, you may feel uncomfortable, but I need to be honest. And I think that's one thing we're not with our children, is honest. And then there's studies that say that children won't even take advice from parents when it comes to sex because they don't trust you, because they believe that you're going to lie. And so if my kid cannot trust me, how can I trust that she'll take what I say outside of here and not take her friend's opinion? I actually have a podcast segment about Let's Talk About Sex with Your Teen, where I'm talking about it with my teen. And she's telling me, like, there's a lot of parents out here that have no idea what these guys are doing, because they're like, I don't see nothing. I don't hear, you know what I'm saying? And it's just like, you are doing yourself a disservice when you are not vulnerable with your children as well.
Now, we're talking about the communication from parent to child, but can you share some strategies or exercises that you can recommend to help couples improve their communication and intimacy?
Absolutely. One thing I will say is, usually when couples are at heads, it's because neither one of them understand each other. And what's usually typically happening is that I cannot hear what you're saying because I only can respond by what I think I hear what you're saying. And so I always tell couples, when someone asks you to do something, the first thing you should say, what does that look like to you? Because what I hear in my ears may not be what I see with my eyes. And so understanding like, hey, can you grab me a glass of water, right? You might say with a lot of ice, you may need to be detailed and stuff, because if somebody just brings you a cup of water, you're like, and you didn't bring me no ice, right? Well, I didn't know that you wanted some ice. So what does that look like for you? Hey, can you go do this tomorrow? What does that look like for you? Well, around 2 p.m., I would like this to be picked up and stuff. Giving details, right? Being descriptive with your words. But that happens when we're so caught up in TV, you lose the limit of words, and then you just kind of just be like, you already know, right? So that's the first thing, is just understanding, what does that look like for you? Then when you get in an argument or something, and the moment that you capture that this is a disagreement, you say, what are you saying that I'm not hearing? And then that gives the person an opportunity to be mature, if they are, and to say, I feel like you're not listening to me. Well, I'm standing right here. What do you need me to hear? Right? And it's taking a breath. I have this activity where I do fluff or no fluff, where you have to kind of unfluff the situation before you can get to the real issue. Because a lot of times it's expectations and assumptions, and then what my parents taught me. And then you get to the middle and it's like, what's the real thing? Well, when you don't come home on time, I feel lonely and abandoned. Why do you feel that way? Because I used to da, right? And you start to add context to your story. Now you're really experiencing intimacy, because intimacy is closeness and familiarity. It's not sameness. It's you being able to strip yourself down and to have an emotional conversation without feeling like you're being judged. And I think couples need to get to a point to that, and stop thinking that they know everything just because they've been with somebody for 12, 15, 24 years. People change, and they don't necessarily announce it on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. I might not like vanilla ice cream tomorrow. It doesn't mean I'm going to announce it to my whole household. But what sometimes will happen, you bring me vanilla ice cream. I don't even like vanilla ice cream. And it's like, but you never told me that. So do you have the right to have an attitude, or did I miss out on something that you grew on?
This sounds like it takes a lot of work. And this is not something that I don't think people should take it lightly, especially when we're dealing with intimacy and, where love might be involved, or I don't know. This just seems like it takes work and a lot of mindfulness. So I can appreciate what you're sharing with us today on the show. Listen, how do you stay up to date with the latest research and developments in the field of sexology and relationship coaching?
So for me, I read a lot of articles. I'm also studying under two brilliant professors. One that is a professor at Rutgers University, and then UMass Boston, two neuroscientists. I'm constantly in communication with them, and just looking at what I read and stuff. And then also what I gather from groups. I do a lot of workshops. So a lot of my work is in person. And so I'm actually getting real life feedback, right? And if you probably don't know, but there's not a lot of research on brown people. And so a lot of the research, when I'm reading it, I'm like, well, there was only 2 Black people that were in this, right? So it's like, well, now I have to go find my own research. I have to now go test these things into my workshops. And that's how I stay up to date with those things, because not everything you read is accurate, and not everything you read is applicable to other races and stuff because of situations and things. So I'm constantly doing reading, talking, having conversations, but also doing hands-on work in the community to make sure that I can actually understand things that are truly going on.
Listen, I got Tiffynee Terry-Thomas here in the building with us, on the line with us today. She is a sexologist, a clinical sexologist and relationship coach. And now, Tiffynee, you're going to be at the Brown Girls Brunch event coming up on May 20th. Tell us a little bit about that and what we can expect from you.
I love people. And so for me, I think I've been a guest at this brunch. I've been a vendor at this brunch, and I've been a volunteer at the brunch in Dallas. And so it's, first of all, it's just touching seeing a bunch of women in a room and being able to actually see them be cohesive and loving and just amazing together. For me, I would hope that some good questions come from the panel, so I can actually make people feel a sense of hope I think that's huge. Sometimes you get in a situation and you're like, because of who you surround yourself around, you may not think anybody else is going through that. And I hope to connect everyone through experience and my stories about that. Oh my God, I felt like that. I know exactly what she's talking about, right? So I want to give people hope and encouragement. And I really am excited to be at that event and be, especially around you, get to meet you for the first time. And I love the ladies that are throwing this together. They do a lot of amazing events. So just definitely just want to make sure I bring encouragement.
Love it. Love it. Tiffynee is going to be at the Brown Girls Brunch Houston event that's happening on May the 21st from 12 p.m. to 3. And that address to the location is 1120 Naylor Street here in Houston, Texas. Again, Brown Girls Brunch, May 21st from 12 p.m. to 3 p.m., where Tiffynee Terry is going to be a speaker. I am so excited about what you're bringing to the table, and I think it's such a necessary conversation. We do like to leave our fans, followers, listeners, and supporters with something inspiring, something empowering, something they can take with them the rest of the day, the rest of the week, and all the way up to the weekend. Tiffynee, what can you leave us with today?
I would say I want everybody to understand that vulnerability is not a weakness. It is probably one of the most courageous things that you can do. And so this week, I challenge you to open up yourself and tell somebody something that you know is important to you, and ask them to listen with caring ears, right? And a loving heart. I think a lot of people might see a difference in something when someone knows exactly where you're coming from and why you feel that way. I think that's amazing.
And how do we find you?
You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok at Tiffynee Renee. I spell my name differently. TiffYNEE RENEE Renee at Instagram. You can also find my book. I'm one of the #1 bestsellers at Brown Sugar Katie, the bookstore in Katy. And so you can find this Is It You? And you can find me at Tiffynee.com or sisisyou.com. And yeah.
Tiffynee, thank you for being our guest today. We really appreciate you, and we'll see you